The ground deep under the city began to shake. It was not an earthquake. It was something much worse. The long, dark tunnel of the first phase of the hunter exam was usually quiet, except for the sound of hundreds of people running. But today, the walls were cracking. Dust fell from the ceiling onto the tired runners. Satots, the examiner with no mouth, usually stayed calm. He never showed emotion. But now, his eyes were wide. He felt a pressure on his back that made it hard to breathe. It felt like a giant beast was sleeping right behind them, and it was about to wake up. Runners at the back of the pack started to fall down. They did not trip. They just fainted. Their eyes rolled back in their heads, and they hit the concrete floor hard. Foam came out of their mouths. It looked like a gas leak, but there was no smell. There was only fear. A deep, heavy fear that pressed down on everyone like a heavy blanket. Satots looked back over his shoulder. He needed to see what was causing the tunnel to break. He expected to see a monster or a bomb. He did not expect to see a boy. The boy was small. He wore a red vest and shorts made of jean material. He had a straw hat on his head. He was not running like a trained soldier. He was just jogging and looking around with big, curious eyes. He looked bored. But around him, the air was twisting. The stone floor cracked under his sandals every time he took a step. He was not trying to break the floor. He was just so strong that the world broke around him by accident. Near the boy, the deadly magician named Hisoka was usually smiling. Hisoka loved strong people. He loved to kill them. But Hisoka was not smiling now. He was sweating. He held his playing cards tight in his hand, so tight that they bent. Hisoka looked at the boy in the straw hat and felt a chill go down his spine. For the first time in a long time, the hunter felt like the prey. Next to the straw hat boy, a young assassin with white hair named Killua was shaking. Killua came from a family of killers. He knew how to hide his fear, but his hands were trembling in his pockets. He could feel the power coming off the boy in the red vest. It was not the power of Nen, which hunters used. It was something else. It was wilder. It felt like the ocean crashing into a wall. The boy in the straw hat looked at the cracking walls. He did not seem to notice that people were fainting behind him. He just rubbed his stomach. "I am hungry," the boy said. His voice was loud and echoed in the tunnel. When he spoke, the pressure got worse. A large crack shot up the side of the tunnel wall. Rubble fell down and blocked the path behind them. The exit was blocked. The only way was forward. The timeline of this world had just changed forever. A force of nature had arrived, and the hunter exam was not built to handle him. The test was no longer about who could become a hunter. The test was now about who could survive standing next to Monkey D. Luffy. The tunnel was dark and smelled like old dust and sweat. Hundreds of people were running. The sound of their feet hitting the ground echoed like thunder that would not stop. Satots ran at the front. He moved strangely. His legs moved so fast they looked like wheels, but his upper body was still. He did not sweat. He just kept moving forward. Behind him, the crowd of people was getting tired. Some were breathing hard. Some were holding their sides. But a small group near the front was different. Gon Freaks was a boy with spiky green hair. He carried a fishing pole on his back. He ran with a light step. He looked happy, not tired. Next to him was a boy with white hair named Killua. Killua was riding a skateboard. He had his hands in his pockets. He looked bored. And then there was the third boy. He was the one who had scared Satots earlier. He wore a straw hat and a red vest. He was running, but he was not running like a normal person. His arms flopped around loosely. His head bobbed up and down. He looked like he was made of rubber. Gon looked at the straw hat boy. Gon was curious. He had never seen anyone run like that. The boy in the straw hat looked over at Gon and grinned. His smile was huge. It stretched way too wide across his face. "Hello," the Straw Hat Boy said. "I am Luffy. Are we there yet?" Gon shook his head. He smiled back. "I am Gon. This is the hunter exam. We have to run until the examiner stops. I do not know when that will be." Luffy made a face. He stuck his tongue out. "That is boring. I am hungry. I want meat." Killua looked at Luffy from the side of his eye. Killua was trained to know how strong people were. He was an assassin. He knew that Hisoka, the clown magician running behind them, was dangerous. But Luffy was confusing. Luffy looked weak. He looked silly. But every time Luffy took a step, the air around him felt heavy. It felt like standing next to a sleeping dragon. Killua kicked his skateboard up and caught it. He decided to run on his feet to see if he could keep up. "Hey," Killua said. He looked at Luffy. "You are weird. Why is the floor cracking where you step?" Luffy looked down at his sandals. "Oh, I do not know. Maybe the floor is old." Killua did not believe him, but he did not say anything else. Behind them, a tall man in a blue suit was panting loud. His name was Leorio. He was sweating a lot. He looked like he was going to fall over. Next to Leorio was a boy with blonde hair named Kurapika. Kurapika looked calm, but he was worried about Leorio. Leorio yelled, "Hey, wait up. How can you kids have so much energy? This is impossible. We have been running for 4 hours. Luffy stopped running. He did not slow down. He just stopped instantly. His feet dug into the ground and made 2 long trenches in the concrete. The runners behind him had to jump out of the way to avoid hitting him. Luffy turned around. He looked at Leorio. "Do you want me to carry you?" Luffy asked. Leorio's face turned red. "No, I am a man. I will run on my own." Luffy shrugged. "Okay." He turned back around and started running again. In 1 second, he was back at the front of the group. He moved so fast, he left a cloud of dust behind him. A short, fat man named Tonpa ran up next to them. Tonpa had a friendly smile, but his eyes were mean. He was known as the Rookie Crusher. He liked to make new people fail the exam. He saw Luffy and thought Luffy was stupid. He thought Luffy would be easy to trick. Tonpa reached into his bag and pulled out a bright orange can of juice. "Hello there, friends," Tonpa said. "You must be thirsty. Running is hard work. Here, have some juice. It is a sign of friendship." Gon looked at the juice. He sniffed it. He frowned. Luffy did not sniff it. He grabbed the can. He opened it and drank it in 1 gulp. Then he grabbed another can from Tonpa's hand. He drank that one too. Then he took the whole bag of juice cans from Tonpa. "Thanks, old man," Luffy said. "I was thirsty." Tonpa watched with wide eyes. He waited for Luffy to fall down. The juice was full of very strong laxatives. It was poison that made people sick immediately. A normal person would be crying on the floor in seconds. Luffy drank 20 cans of juice. He crumpled the cans in his hand and ate the metal too. Tonpa's jaw dropped. "You ate the can?" Luffy burped. It was crunchy. The juice tasted funny though, like expired milk. "Do you have any meat?" Tonpa ran away. He ran to the back of the line. He was terrified. He had never seen a human eat metal and drink poison without blinking. He knew he had to stay away from the boy in the straw hat. The tunnel began to go up. They reached a long staircase. The steps were steep. Satat started to run faster. The weak runners began to give up. They fell on the stairs and cried. They could not move their legs anymore. Luffy looked up at the top of the stairs. He could see a tiny light far away. He got excited. He wanted to see the sun. He did not want to climb the stairs one by one. He stopped and grabbed the railing of the stairs. His arm stretched. It stretched longer and longer. It went up 50 feet, then 100 feet. Gon watched him. "Whoa, your arm!" Luffy laughed. "Gum Gum Rocket." Luffy let go of the railing. His body snapped forward like a rubber band. He flew into the air. He flew past hundreds of runners. He flew past Satots. He flew straight towards the light at the top of the stairs. He was laughing the whole way. He crashed through the exit and landed in the grass outside. He rolled and hit a tree. Satots reached the top of the stairs a few minutes later. He saw Luffy sitting under the tree, picking his nose. Satots felt a shiver. He had not seen the boy pass him. The boy moved with a speed that did not make sense. The other runners came out of the tunnel one by one. They were in a dark forest now. The trees were twisted and scary. The ground was wet and foggy. This was the Numere Wetlands. It was also called the Swindler's Swamp. Satots stood on a wall and spoke to the crowd. He told them to be careful. He told them that the creatures in this swamp would try to trick them and eat them. He said they must follow him close. Suddenly, a man screamed. He came out from behind a wall. He was injured. He pointed at Satots. "Do not listen to him," the man yelled. "He is not the examiner. He is a monster. I am the real examiner." The man pulled a dead creature out of a bag. It looked like Satots. It was a man-faced ape. The crowd gasped. They did not know who to believe. Leorio looked confused. Hanzo the ninja looked ready to fight. Then, 3 playing cards flew through the air. They moved faster than bullets. 2 cards hit the shouting man in the chest. 1 card flew towards Satots. Satots caught the card with his hand. The shouting man fell down, dead. Hisoka. The magician chuckled. He stood in the crowd, shuffling his cards. "I see," Hisoka said. "The real examiner would catch my attack. The fake one could not." The crowd was scared of Hisoka. He had killed a man without blinking. But Luffy was not looking at Hisoka. Luffy was looking at the man-faced ape on the ground. He walked over to it. He poked it. "Is this a monkey?" Luffy asked. "It looks like a person, but it smells like lunch." Hisoka looked at Luffy. Hisoka's eyes narrowed. He felt a strange energy coming from the Straw Hat Boy. It was not Nen. Hisoka used Gaio, a technique to see life energy. He looked at Luffy. He saw nothing. Luffy had no aura. To Hisoka, Luffy looked like a normal human. But his instincts told him something was wrong. It felt like looking at a calm ocean right before a hurricane. Luffy looked up and saw Hisoka staring at him. Luffy tilted his head. "Do you have cards? Are we playing a game?" Hisoka smiled. "A very fun game, little boy. It is called Staying Alive." Satots turned around. He told everyone to follow him into the fog. The run began again. This time, the ground was wet. The fog was thick. People could not see 5 feet in front of them. Screams began to echo in the forest. Monsters were attacking. Giant frogs waded in the mud. Vines grabbed people and pulled them underground. Gon and Killua ran together. They lost sight of Leorio and Kurapika. "We have to find them," Gon said. Killua shook his head. "Forget them. They are weak. If we stop, we will die." Gon stopped running. "I am going back." Killua sighed. He stopped too. "Fine. Let's go." They ran back into the fog. They heard a loud crash. Trees were falling down. They saw a giant shadow in the mist. It was a huge turtle with strawberries growing on its back. The turtle was snapping its jaws at Leorio. Leorio was swinging a stick, trying to fight it off. Suddenly, a red blur flew past them. It was Luffy. Luffy landed on top of the giant turtle. "Food!" Luffy yelled. Luffy bit the shell of the turtle. His teeth crunched through the rock-hard shell. The turtle screamed. Luffy ripped a chunk of the shell off and threw it away. He grabbed the strawberries on the turtle's back. He ate them all in 1 second. The turtle tried to bite him. Luffy headbutted the turtle. The turtle's head smashed into the mud. It did not move again. Leorio stared at Luffy. "What are you?" Luffy swallowed the strawberries. "They are sweet, but I want meat." The fog grew thicker. The group got separated again. Luffy wandered off. He was not following Satots anymore. He was following the smell of something interesting. He walked into a clearing. In the middle of the clearing, Hisoka was standing. He was surrounded by bodies. Many applicants had tried to attack him. Hisoka had killed them all. Leorio and Kurapika were standing there too. They were breathing hard. They were ready to fight Hisoka. They knew they could not win, but they would not run. Hisoka held a card between his fingers. He licked his lips. He looked at Leorio and Kurapika. He was deciding who to kill first. "I will let you pass," Hisoka said softly. "You have good eyes. But maybe I should cut off a little bit, just to see what happens." Hisoka raised his hand. He was about to throw a card at Leorio's throat. Luffy walked out of the bushes. He was holding a giant mushroom he had found. He took a bite of the mushroom. He spat it out. "Blech, this tastes like dirt." Hisoka stopped. He turned his head slowly. He looked at Luffy. The dangerous pressure in the air disappeared for a second because Luffy was so confusing. "You again," Hisoka said. "You are interrupting my playtime." Luffy looked at the bodies on the ground. He looked at Hisoka. He looked at Leorio and Kurapika. Luffy did not like bullies. He did not understand the hunter exam, but he understood when someone was being mean. Luffy dropped the mushroom. "Hey, clown guy," Luffy said. Hisoka's eye twitched. "I am a magician." Luffy picked his nose. "You look like a clown. Why are you hurting my friends?" Hisoka smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "Because it is fun. Do you want to play too?" Hisoka flicked his wrist. A playing card flew at Luffy's face. It was wrapped in shu, a technique that made paper as hard as steel. The card was sharp enough to slice through a tree trunk. It hit Luffy right between the eyes. It did not cut him. The card bounced off Luffy's rubber skin with a soft, boing sound. It fell to the grass. Hisoka froze. He blinked. He had put enough power in that card to kill a bear. He looked at Luffy's forehead. There was no blood. There was not even a scratch. Luffy frowned. That was rude. Luffy made a fist. He did not use haki yet. He did not use any special technique. He just swung his arm. His arm stretched out like a whip. It flew across the clearing. His fist hit Hisoka in the stomach. Hisoka did not have time to dodge. He used Ko to block. He focused all his aura into his stomach to protect himself. He thought he could take the punch. He was wrong. Luffy's punch hit him like a cannonball. The force of the punch blew the air away. The trees behind Hisoka snapped in half. Hisoka's eyes popped open. He flew backward. He smashed through one tree, then another, then a third. He landed in a pile of dirt 50 feet away. Leorio and Kurapika dropped their weapons. Their mouths were open. They had just seen the scariest man in the exam get swatted like a fly. Luffy pulled his arm back. It snapped back into place. He adjusted his straw hat. "Don't hit people with cards," Luffy said. "Paper cuts hurt." Hisoka stood up slowly. He wiped a drop of blood from his mouth. He was not angry. He was shaking. But he was shaking with excitement. He started to laugh. It was a low, creepy laugh that got louder and louder. Hisoka had found a new toy, a toy that did not break. Luffy looked at Hisoka laughing. Luffy looked confused. "Why is he happy?" I punched him. Gon and Killua ran into the clearing. They saw the destruction. They saw the broken trees. They saw Hisoka laughing maniacally. And they saw Luffy standing there, looking bored. Killua looked at the destruction. He looked at Luffy. For the first time, Killua felt a true, cold fear. He realized that the boy in the straw hat was not just weird. He was a monster, from a different world. The first phase of the exam was over, but the real danger had just started. The balance of power had shifted. The examiner, Satots, watched from the trees nearby. He took notes on a pad of paper. He wrote one sentence: anomaly detected. Threat level, unknown. The iron gates of the Visca Forest Reserve groaned as they slid open. The sound was heavy, like the grinding of teeth in a giant skull. Behind the gates, a large mansion sat in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by tables, grills, and cooking equipment. The smell of the forest here was different from the swamp. It did not smell like rot. It smelled like wild animals and old wood. The surviving applicants walked into the clearing. They were dirty, bloody, and exhausted. Their numbers had dropped significantly. Many had died in the fog. Many had been eaten. Those who remained were the strong ones, or the lucky ones. Luffy walked in the middle of the group. He was not tired. He was looking around at the cooking equipment with bright, starry eyes. His stomach rumbled. It was a loud, growling sound that made the applicants near him jump. To Luffy, this place looked like a restaurant. He did not care about the exam anymore. He only cared about the promise of food. Sitting in front of the mansion were the two examiners for the second phase. One was a massive man named Buhara. He was so large his stomach spilled over his belt. The other was a woman named Menchi. She sat with her legs crossed, wearing a bikini top and shorts. Her hair was teal and spiked up. She played with a kitchen knife, spinning it around her fingers with dangerous speed. She looked at the tired crowd with boredom. Menchi stood up. She did not smile. She looked at the applicants like they were ingredients she had not decided to use yet. She announced that the second phase would be a cooking contest. The main ingredient was pork. The applicants had to go into the forest, find a pig, kill it, and cook it. Luffy did not listen to the rules about cooking. He only heard the word pig. He turned around and sprinted into the forest before Menchi finished speaking. He left a cloud of dust that covered the other applicants. Gon and Killua ran after him. They knew they had to keep an eye on him. Killua was especially worried. He had seen what Luffy did to Hisoka. He knew Luffy was a ticking time bomb. If someone made Luffy mad, people would die. The forest was dense. The trees were thick and blocked out the sun. Suddenly, the ground shook. A herd of great stamps charged through the underbrush. These were not normal pigs. They were the size of rhinoceroses. They had massive snouts made of bone that were hard enough to smash through concrete. They were carnivores. They ate humans. The other applicants screamed and scattered. Hanzo the ninja jumped into a tree. Leorio tried to run, but he tripped. A great stamp lowered its head and charged at Leorio. The bone snout aimed right for Leorio's chest. Luffy dropped from the sky. He landed on the pig's head. He did not use a weapon. He just stomped his sandals down. The force of the impact drove the pig's head into the dirt. The ground cracked. The pig's body flipped over from the momentum. It crashed into a tree and stopped moving. Luffy stood on top of the unconscious beast. He drooled. He grabbed the pig by its tail. The pig weighed 2 tons. Luffy lifted it over his shoulder like it was a backpack. He did not struggle. He turned to look for more. He saw another pig charging at Gon. Luffy stretched his arm. He grabbed the second pig's snout. He pulled. The pig flew through the air and smashed into the first pig. Luffy laughed. He grabbed 2 more pigs. He tied their tails together. He dragged 4 giant pigs back toward the exam site. The other applicants watched in horror. They were struggling to kill one pig. Luffy was collecting them like toys. Back at the cooking site, the fires were lit. The smell of roasting meat filled the air. This should have been a happy time. But the atmosphere was tense. Menchi was a gourmet hunter. She took food seriously. She was not just looking for cooked meat. She was looking for art. One by one, the applicants brought their roasted pigs to her. One by one, she threw the plates on the ground. She yelled at them. The meat was tough. It was burnt. It was raw in the middle. She failed everyone. She was getting angry. Her aura began to leak out. It was a sharp, prickly aura that felt like needles on the skin. She was a professional hunter, and she felt insulted by the low quality of the cooking. Then Luffy arrived. He did not bring a plate. He brought a whole pig. He had thrown the entire 2-ton animal onto the grill fire. He had not skinned it. He had not cleaned it. He just burned it until it stopped moving. The smell of burnt hair and charred flesh was terrible. It made the other applicants cover their noses. Luffy dragged the blackened carcass to the judge's table. He slammed it down. The table broke under the weight. Splinters of wood flew everywhere. Menchi jumped back to avoid being hit by the giant pig corpse. "Eat!" Luffy yelled. "It is good!" Menchi stared at the burnt mountain of meat. Her eye twitched. A vein popped out on her forehead. She felt a level of disrespect she had never felt before. She looked at Luffy. She saw a dirty boy with a stupid smile who had just destroyed her table and insulted her profession. "You fail," Menchi said. Her voice was ice cold. Luffy stopped smiling. "What?" "I said you fail," Menchi repeated. She stepped forward. "That is not cooking. That is garbage. You did not even remove the hair. You are disqualified. Go away." Luffy looked at the pig. He looked at Menchi. He ripped a chunk of meat off the burnt pig. He ate it. He swallowed the bone too. "It tastes fine," Luffy said with his mouth full. "You are weird. Just pass me so I can eat the rest." Menchi snapped. She was a single star hunter. She had dedicated her life to the art of flavor. This boy was mocking her. She reached behind her back and pulled out 2 large kitchen knives. Her aura flared up. It turned red. The air around her got hot. The other applicants backed away. They knew a fight was coming. "Get out of my sight," Menchi growled, "or I will carve you up like the pig." Luffy swallowed his food. His face changed. The silly look disappeared. His eyes went dark. He did not like it when people threatened him over food. He did not know what a hunter was. He did not care about her rank. He only knew she was standing between him and his meal. "I am not leaving," Luffy said. His voice was low. It carried a weight that made the fire in the grills flicker. Menchi did not wait. She was fast. She moved quicker than the eye could follow. She slashed her knives in a cross pattern, aiming for Luffy's chest. She did not intend to kill him, but she wanted to hurt him bad enough to teach him a lesson. She used Ren to enhance the sharpness of her blades. These knives could cut through steel. The knives hit Luffy's chest. The sound was not a slicing sound. It was the sound of a rubber tire being hit with a bat. The knives bounced off. Menchi froze. Her wrists hurt from the impact. She looked at Luffy's chest. There was no cut. There was not even a mark. Her brain could not process what happened. She had used Nen. He was not using Nen. It should have been impossible. Luffy looked at his chest. He brushed off some ash. "That tickles," Luffy said. Menchi panicked. She was a pro. When a direct attack failed, instinct took over. She spun and kicked Luffy in the head. Her leg was wrapped in aura. It hit Luffy's neck. Luffy's head snapped to the side. It stretched. It kept stretching. His neck elongated until his head was touching his shoulder. Then it wrapped around his own neck like a snake. Menchi screamed. She jumped back. "What are you?" Luffy's head snapped back into place. He cracked his neck. "I am a rubber man," Luffy said. He pulled his arm back. He did not aim at Menchi. He aimed at the ground in front of her. He wanted to make a point. "Gum Gum, axe!" Luffy swung his leg up high. It stretched 50 feet into the air. Then he slammed it down. His heel hit the ground in the center of the cooking area. The impact was catastrophic. It was not just a kick. It was an earthquake. The ground exploded. A shockwave ripped through the clearing. The stone patio shattered. The grills were blown away. The mansion behind them cracked down the middle, and half of it collapsed. Dirt and rocks rained down on everyone. The other applicants were blown off their feet. Hanzo held onto a tree to keep from flying away. Kurapika shielded Leorio. Hisoka, who was watching from the back, had to stab his cards into the ground to anchor himself. Hisoka's eyes were wide. He was breathing heavy. He was seeing raw, physical destruction that defied the laws of physics. When the dust settled, there was a crater 10 meters wide in front of Menchi. She was standing on the edge of it. She was shaking. She had dropped her knives. She looked at the destruction. Then, she looked at the boy. He was just standing there, picking his ear. "I am hungry," Luffy said again. Menchi fell to her knees. She was not weak. She was a strong hunter. But she had never seen power like this. It was irrational. It was unfair. She felt small. She realized that if that kick had hit her, she would not exist anymore. Her pride as a gourmet hunter crumbled. Buhara, the other examiner, stood up. He was sweating. He looked at Menchi. He looked at Luffy. He knew the exam was broken. The equipment was gone. The food was buried in rubble. "I think we have a problem," Buhara said quietly. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence. It was the sound of wooden sandals clacking on stone. The sound came from the sky. A figure dropped from an airship that was hovering high above the clouds. The figure landed softly on a piece of broken concrete. It was an old man. He wore a white robe and had a ponytail. His earlobes were long and stretched. He looked frail, but his presence filled the entire clearing. The air felt heavy, but not scary. It felt like standing in a temple. It was Isaac Netero, the chairman of the Hunter Association. Netero looked at the crater. He looked at the collapsed mansion. He looked at the terrified Menchi. Finally, he looked at Luffy. Netero stroked his beard. He smiled. It was a mischievous smile. "Ho ho ho," Netero chuckled. "It seems we have a lively batch this year." Menchi stood up quickly. "Chairman, I am sorry. This applicant, he destroyed the site. He is uncontrollable. He must be disqualified." Netero raised a hand to stop her. He walked over to Luffy. He looked the boy up and down. Netero could see things others could not. He could see that Luffy had no aura pores open. He was completely untrained in Nen. Yet, the physical power radiating from his small body was denser than anything Netero had seen in decades. It reminded him of the monster ants from the Dark Continent stories, or perhaps something even older. "Hello, young man," Netero said. "That was quite a kick." Luffy looked at the old man. "Who are you? Do you have meat?" Netero laughed. "I might. But first, tell me, why did you break the kitchen?" "She wouldn't let me eat," Luffy said, pointing at Menchi. "I caught the pig. I cooked the pig. She said it was bad. It was not bad. It was meat." Netero nodded. "I see. A difference of opinion on taste." Netero turned to Menchi. "Menchi, my dear, you are a gourmet hunter. You seek new flavors, but you also seek the unknown. Tell me, have you ever tasted a beast cooked by a monster?" Menchi blinked. "No, sir." Netero gestured to the burnt pig that Luffy had tried to serve. It was covered in dust now. "Taste it," Netero ordered. Menchi hesitated, but she could not disobey the chairman. She walked over to the dirty, burnt meat. She cut a small piece. She put it in her mouth. She chewed. It was terrible. It was burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. It tasted like charcoal and hair. But under the burnt taste, the meat was tender. It had been killed instantly. The animal had felt no fear before it died. Because Luffy had killed it with such overwhelming force, the meat was perfectly relaxed. "It is edible," Menchi whispered. Netero clapped his hands. "Wonderful. Then he passes?" Menchi looked down. She felt ashamed. She had let her temper get in the way. She had judged him by her standards, but he was operating on a different level. "He passes the cooking requirement," Menchi said quietly. "But the facility is destroyed. We cannot continue the exam for the others." Netero looked at the destruction. "True. You have made quite a mess, young man." Luffy shrugged. Sorry. Netero grinned. He saw an opportunity. The hunter exam was boring this year. The challenges were too standard. He wanted to see what this rubber boy could really do. He wanted to test the limits of this anomaly. I have an idea, Netero said. The second phase is cancelled. Everyone who is currently here passes. The applicants gasped. They started to cheer. They had survived because Luffy threw a tantrum. But, Netero continued, raising a finger, the trip to the third phase will be long. We will take my airship. And on that airship, I would like to play a game with you, Luffy. Luffy tilted his head. A game? Yes, Netero said. If you can take the ball from me before we land, I will give you a hunter license, right now. And I will buy you all the meat you can eat. Luffy's eyes turned into giant hearts. Meat. All I can eat. Netero looked at the other applicants. Gon and Killua were watching closely. Netero's eyes twinkled. You two can play too, if you want, Netero added. Luffy jumped in the air. Yay! Let's go, old man. I'm gonna take that ball. Netero turned and walked toward the airship. His back was turned, but his face was serious. He had intervened because he had to. If Menchi had attacked again, she would have died. Luffy would have killed her by accident. The balance of the world was fragile. This boy did not belong here. Netero needed to measure him. He needed to know if Luffy was a savior or a destroyer. As they boarded the airship, Killua walked next to Gon. Killua was pale. Gon, Killua whispered. That old man. He is strong. But Luffy, I know, Gon said. Gon was not smiling anymore. He looked at Luffy's back. For the first time, Gon felt a gap. He usually felt like he could catch up to anyone. But watching Luffy destroy the exam site, Gon felt like he was watching a natural disaster. Luffy walked onto the airship, humming a song about food. He did not know that he had just terrified every professional hunter in the vicinity. He did not know that reports were already being sent to the Zoldyck family and the Phantom Troupe about a rubbery demon. The airship lifted off. The sun began to set. The clouds turned red. Inside the ship, the game was about to begin. But this would not be the playful game from the original timeline. In this timeline, Netero was not playing to pass time. He was playing to survive. He was the strongest Nen user in the world, and he was preparing to fight a boy made of rubber who did not know the meaning of limits. The corridor of the airship was long and quiet. Luffy stretched his arms. He cracked his knuckles. I'm gonna win, Luffy said to himself. Deep inside the ship, in the shadows, another figure watched. It was Illumi Zoldyck, disguised as Gitarakur, with needles in his face. Illumi pulled a phone from his pocket. He dialed a number. Father, Illumi whispered into the phone, the contract has changed. There is something here that threatens the family business. No, not the boy with the fishing rod. The other one. The one who breaks the world. Yes, I will observe. But I think we might need grandfather. The line went dead. The airship flew into the night, carrying a cargo of monsters. And the biggest monster of all was asking for dinner. The gym floor was made of polished wood. It reflected the overhead lights. Isaac Netero stood in the center, balancing a rubber ball on his finger. He looked calm, but his muscles were tight. Across from him, Luffy stretched his arms. The sound of rubber snapping echoed in the quiet room. Gon and Killua sat on the sidelines. They were sweating just by watching. They felt the air pressure drop. Begin! Netero dropped the ball. Before it hit the ground, Luffy vanished. He did not run. He exploded from his standing position. The floorboards where he had been standing shattered into splinters. He appeared instantly in front of Netero, his hand grabbing for the ball. Netero's eyes widened. The old man moved faster than sound. He pivoted on one foot, dodging Luffy's hand by a millimeter. The wind from Luffy's grab tore a hole in Netero's sleeve. Netero spun away. He realized immediately that he could not play casually. If he let his guard down, this boy would take his arm off. Luffy bounced off the wall. He did not lose speed. He ricocheted like a bullet. He came at Netero from the ceiling. Gum pistol! Luffy's fist stretched down. Netero did not dodge this time. He raised his hand. He used Ryu, focusing his aura into his palm to block the impact. He wanted to test the boy's weight. Luffy's fist hit Netero's palm. A shockwave blasted through the room. The windows of the airship cracked. The entire vessel lurched to the right. In the cockpit, the pilot screamed as the controls fought against them. Netero slid backward. His feet carved deep grooves into the wood. He was shocked. He had used a significant amount of Nen to guard, yet his arm went numb. The physical force behind the punch was heavy. It felt like being hit by a falling building. And the boy was not using aura. He was just using muscle and momentum. Luffy landed on the floor. He frowned. He looked at Netero. "You are tough, old man," Luffy said. "You feel hard. Like rock." Netero shook his hand to get the feeling back. He chuckled, but his eyes were sharp. "You are quite strong yourself, but you cannot catch the ball if you are trying to kill me." Luffy grinned. "I am not trying to kill you. I am playing." Luffy attacked again. This time he threw a flurry of punches. Gum Gatling. Hundreds of fists filled the air. They looked like a wall of rubber. Netero was forced to use his speed. He danced through the barrage of punches. He looked like a ghost. But he was struggling. Every time he dodged, the air pressure from Luffy's punches hammered his body. The walls of the gym began to cave in. The metal beams groaned. Killua watched with his mouth open. He gripped his knees. He was trembling. He had been trained to assess threat levels. He knew Netero was the Grandmaster. He knew Netero could kill anyone in the room. But Netero was on the defensive. Netero was sweating. "This does not make sense," Killua whispered. "He has no Nen. He has no technique. He is just strong. It is unfair." Gon watched with shining eyes. He did not see the danger. He only saw the excitement. He wants to be that strong too. Suddenly, Luffy stopped. He took a deep breath. He crouched down. He put his hand on his knee. His legs began to pump like pistons. Steam started to rise from his skin. His skin turned a shade of pink. The air in the room got hot. Gear. Netero felt a spike of absolute danger. His instincts screamed at him. If the boy attacked now, the airship would break in half. They would all fall from the sky. Netero stopped bouncing the ball. He held it up. "Stop!" Netero yelled. Luffy stopped. The steam vanished. He stood up and tilted his head. "What? Did I win?" Netero sighed. He wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked at the cracked walls. He looked at the floor, which was now sawdust. "The game is over," Netero said. "If we continue, we will crash. You are too dangerous for a game of tag inside a vehicle." Luffy pouted. "But I want the ball." Netero tossed the ball to Luffy. "Here, take it. You forced me to use both hands and my left leg, and you made me worry about my life. That is a victory." Luffy caught the ball. He cheered. "Yay, I win. Do I get the meat now?" Netero nodded slowly. "Yes. Go eat." Luffy ran out of the room, yelling for food. Gon ran after him, congratulating him. Killua stayed behind. He looked at Netero. Netero was looking at his own hand. It was bruised. "He is a monster, isn't he?" Killua asked quietly. Netero looked at the young assassin. "He is something else. He is a natural disaster in human skin. Tell me, boy, are you his friend?" Killua hesitated. I don't know. We just met." Netero's face turned serious. "Be careful. A force like that pulls people in. It can protect you, or it can crush you. Do not try to compete with him. You are a cat. He is a tsunami." Killua walked out of the room. He felt heavy. He felt a dark voice in his head. It sounded like his brother Illumi. "Run away, kill," the voice said. "You cannot handle this. You are weak." The airship landed the next morning on top of a tall pillar of rock. This was Trick Tower, the third phase of the exam. The wind was howling. The drop to the ground was thousands of feet. If anyone fell, they would die. The examiner, a small bean-like man named Lippo, spoke over a loudspeaker. He told them they had 72 hours to reach the bottom. They had to find secret doors in the floor. Luffy walked around the top of the tower. He looked over the edge. "It is high," Luffy said. Gon found a trapdoor. "Look, here is one." Killua found another. And here, they found 5 trapdoors close together. They realized they needed a team of 5. Kurapika and Leorio ran over to join them. "We need 5 people," Kurapika said. "This fits perfectly. We should go together." Luffy nodded. "Okay, let's go." They all jumped into the trapdoors at the same time. They landed in a small room inside the tower. On the wall, there were 5 watches. A door was locked in front of them. A sign said, "Majority Rule." They put on the watches. The door opened. They walked into a long corridor. The test was designed to make them fight each other. They had to vote on choices. Go right or left. Open the door or not. Every choice had consequences. Luffy pressed the buttons randomly. He did not read the questions. "Luffy!" Leorio yelled. "You have to read it. If you press the wrong button, we get electrocuted." Luffy picked his nose. "Reading is boring. I trust you guys." They managed to move forward because Gon and Kurapika were smart. But the tension was high. Leorio was stressed. Killua was quiet. Luffy was just walking, humming a tune. They reached a large arena. It was a wide stone platform over a deep, dark pit. On the other side of the pit, 5 figures stood in the shadows. These were the prisoners. The examiner explained the rules. It was a series of one-on-one matches. The team had to win 3 out of 5 matches to pass. The prisoners stepped forward. They looked dangerous. There was a scarred man named Bendot, a creepy bomber named Sedakan, a massive man with blue skin named Majtani, a woman named Larut, and a man wrapped in bandages named Jones, the Dissector. Tonpa, who had found a different route, was watching from a hidden camera. He laughed. He knew these prisoners were sentenced to hundreds of years in jail. They were desperate. They would do anything to reduce their sentences. The first match was Tonpa versus Bendot, in a different timeline. But here, it was the main group. "Who goes first?" Kurapika asked. "I will go," Luffy yelled. He stepped forward onto the bridge. The prisoners whispered to each other. They saw a skinny boy in a straw hat. They thought he was an easy target. "I will take him," said Sedakan. "He looked like a weak kid too. I can trick him." Sedakan walked out. He proposed a match. "We will play a game of candles. Whoever's candle goes out first loses." Luffy looked at the candles. One was long, one was short. Sedakan offered Luffy the choice. Luffy grabbed the long candle. "I want the big one." Sedakan smiled. He knew the long candle was rigged to burn fast. He lit the candles. The match began. Luffy stared at the flame. He did not move. Sedakan waited for Luffy to panic when the candle started burning fast. But Luffy did not panic. He just watched the fire. Suddenly, a wind blew through the tower. It came from the vents. Luffy shielded his candle. "This is boring," Luffy said. Luffy took a deep breath. He inhaled a massive amount of air. His chest puffed out like a balloon. Sedakan looked confused. "What are you doing?" Luffy blew. He did not blow gently. He released all the air in one blast. It was like a hurricane. The wind hit Sedakan. It blew Sedakan's candle out instantly. It also blew Sedakan off the bridge. The prisoner flew into the wall and stuck there. Luffy's candle was still lit. "I win!" Luffy cheered. The prisoners stared. That was not a game of candles. That was an assault. The score was 1-0. Next was Mudge-Tani. He was a fraud. He had a fake spider tattoo on his back to scare people into thinking he was a member of the Phantom Troupe. He stepped onto the bridge. He flexed his muscles. He looked at the group. "Who is next?" Mudge-Tani roared. "I will crush you." Kurapika stepped forward. His eyes were cold. He hated the Phantom Troupe. He wanted to fight. But before Kurapika could move, Luffy grabbed his shoulder. "Wait," Luffy said. "He is lying." Kurapika stopped. "What?" "He smells like a liar," Luffy said. "He is not strong. He is just loud. Let Gon go." Gon nodded. He trusted Luffy's instinct. Gon walked out. Mudge-Tani laughed. "A little kid? I will break you." Mudge-Tani turned around to show his tattoo. He expected Gon to be scared. Gon looked at the tattoo. "It looks like a drawing," Gon said. Mudge-Tani got angry. He charged at Gon. He swung his massive fist. Gon dodged. Gon was fast, but he was hesitant to hurt people. Mudge-Tani realized this. He started to taunt Gon. He threatened to kill Gon's friends. "I will kill the white-haired kid first," Mudge-Tani yelled. Luffy's eyes went shadowed. The playful vibe vanished from the room. The air temperature dropped 10 degrees. Gon punched Mudge-Tani in the face. Mudge-Tani fell down. But he did not stay down. He pretended to be unconscious to run out the clock. He wanted to waste their time. The referee started counting. Mudge-Tani opened one eye and smirked. He was gaming the system. Killua saw this. He got annoyed. He wanted to go out there and finish it. But then, the bridge shook. Luffy walked out onto the bridge. It was against the rules for a third party to interfere. Lipo shouted over the speaker, "Stop! If you interfere, your team is disqualified." Luffy ignored the speaker. He walked up to Mudge-Tani. Mudge-Tani saw Luffy coming. He felt a primal fear. He forgot about his plan. He scrambled backward. "Stay away!" Mudge-Tani screamed. Luffy stood over him. "You are wasting our time," Luffy said. "You are making my friends wait. I hate waiting." Luffy raised his foot. He stomped on the bridge right next to Mudge-Tani's head. The stone bridge shattered. A crack shot through the entire structure. The section of the bridge where Mudge-Tani was lying broke off. It fell into the dark pit below. Mudge-Tani screamed as he fell. Luffy reached out his hand. His arm stretched down into the darkness. He grabbed Mudge-Tani by the ankle just before he disappeared. He pulled the massive man back up and threw him onto the safe platform. Mudge-Tani was crying. He was shaking uncontrollably. "I surrender. I surrender. Please don't drop me." Luffy looked at the referee. He gave up. Next. Lipo was silent. He had never seen an applicant threaten a prisoner with gravity. He cleared his throat. "Winner. Gon. Score. 2-0. The third prisoner was Jonas the Dissector. He was a serial killer. He did not care about sentences. He just wanted to kill. He walked onto the remaining part of the bridge. He looked at the group. He pointed a bony finger at Killua. "I want that one," Jonas hissed. "I want to hear him scream." Killua stepped forward. His eyes were dull. He was in assassin mode. He was ready to rip Jonas's heart out. But as Killua walked past Luffy, Luffy put a hand on Killua's head. He ruffled Killua's white hair. "Be careful," Luffy said. Killua froze. He looked up at Luffy. He expected Luffy to tell him to be nice, or to not kill. "Don't get blood on your clothes," Luffy grinned. "It is hard to wash out." Killua blinked. Then he smiled. A real smile. "Okay," Killua said. Killua walked onto the bridge. Jonas laughed. He prepared to use his bare hands to tear Killua apart. Jonas had killed hundreds of people with his grip strength. Jonas lunged. Killua vanished. There was no sound of impact. There was only the sound of a wet thud. Jonas stood still. He looked down at his chest. There was a hole where his heart used to be. He looked at Killua. Killua was standing behind him, holding a beating heart in a cloth bag he had pulled from his pocket. Killua turned around. He looked at Luffy. "See? No mess," Killua said. Luffy laughed. She. Good job." Jonas fell over dead. The remaining prisoners shrieked. They ran back into the shadows. They refused to come out. They locked the door from the inside. They realized that the applicants were not victims. They were monsters. Lipo announced that the team had won by default because the opponents forfeited. The bridge extended to the exit. The team walked into a small room. There was a problem. The path ended. There were 2 doors. One door said long and hard path, 45 hours. The other door said short and easy path, 3 minutes. But the sign said only 3 people could take the short path. 2 had to stay behind and fail. The atmosphere got heavy. Leorio looked at the ground. He knew he was the weakest. He started to say he would stay. Gon started to think of a way to break the wall. Kurapika started to analyze the mechanics of the lock. Luffy looked at the wall between the 2 doors. He tapped it. It was solid rock. "Hey," Luffy said, "why do we have to choose?" "Because those are the rules," Leorio shouted. "We cannot take everyone." Luffy frowned. "The rules are stupid." Luffy bit his thumb. He blew air into his bones. His arm inflated like a giant balloon. It became the size of a truck. Gear 3rd. Bone balloon. Gon and Killua realized what he was doing. They covered their ears. Luffy swung his giant arm. Gum. Gigant pistol. He punched the wall, not the door. The wall. The entire wall separating the room from the outside world. The tower shook. The wall exploded outward. Dust and debris flew into the night sky. A massive hole appeared in the side of Trick Tower. They could see the ground far below. It was a steep slide down the rubble, but it was open. Luffy deflated. He turned into a tiny, chibi version of himself as a side effect. "Let's jump!" Tiny Luffy squeaked. Leorio screamed, "Are you insane? We will die!" Killua grabbed Leorio. Gon grabbed Kurapika. Luffy grabbed onto Gon's leg. "We are not choosing," Gon said happily. "We are going together." They jumped out of the hole in the tower. They slid down the side of the massive structure, surfing on broken rocks. It was terrifying. It was reckless. It broke every rule of the exam. Inside the tower, Lipo watched on the monitor. His mouth hung open. He dropped his coffee mug. They just broke the tower, Lipo whispered. At the bottom of the tower, the 3rd phase was ending. The other applicants who had finished were waiting. Hisoka was building a tower of cards. Illumi was sleeping, standing up. Suddenly, a landslide of rocks crashed down near the finish line. Out of the dust cloud, 5 figures tumbled onto the grass. They were coughing, bruised, and covered in dirt. But they were all there. Tiny Luffy stood up. He popped back to normal size. He brushed off his shorts. "That was fun!" Luffy yelled. Hisoka looked at Luffy. Hisoka's tower of cards fell over. He smiled. His interest was peaking. This boy destroyed the logic of the exam at every turn. The sun began to rise. The 4th phase was about to begin on Zevil Island. This was the manhunt. Each applicant would draw a number. They had to steal the badge of their target. Luffy drew a card from the box. He looked at it. Number 44. Killua looked at the number. He went pale. "Luffy," Killua whispered. "That is Hisoka's number." Luffy looked across the field. Hisoka was staring right at him, licking his lips. Hisoka held up his own card. It was number 405. Gon's number. The web of fate had tangled. The predator was hunting the protagonist, and the rubber anomaly was hunting the predator. The island was not big enough for all of them. The era of games was over. The fourth phase would be a war. And in the shadows of the island, the spiders were starting to move. The Phantom Troupe had heard rumors of the boy who destroyed the tower. They were curious. And when the spiders got curious, people died. Luffy rubbed his stomach. I hope the island has meat. The humidity on Zivil Island was thick enough to drown in. It was a suffocating layer of heat and moisture that clung to the skin of every applicant who stepped off the boat. The fourth phase had begun. The rules were simple. Hunt your target, take their badge, keep your own. For most, this was a test of stealth and patience. For Monkey D. Luffy, it was a test of how long he could walk without shouting. He failed this test in the first 5 minutes. As soon as the examiner Kara let him off the boat, Luffy walked into the dense jungle, took a deep breath, and screamed Hisoka's name. The birds in the canopy took flight in a panic. The other applicants, hiding in bushes and behind trees, froze. They looked at the boy in the straw hat like he was insane. Stealth was the only armor they had, and Luffy had just thrown his away. Gon Freaks heard the shout from a mile away. He was crouched in the high grass, clutching his fishing rod. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He had drawn Hisoka's number in the canon timeline, but here the numbers were twisted. Hisoka was hunting him. Gon knew this. He could feel it. The air around him tasted like iron and blood. It was a pressure that pricked his skin, a sensation he would later learn was the projection of malicious Nen. Gon wanted to run, but he couldn't. He was paralyzed by a mixture of fear and a strange, dark excitement. He wanted to see if he could survive the magician. But Luffy's shout broke his concentration. Gon worried for his friend. If Luffy found Hisoka, Luffy would be in danger. Gon made a choice, a small choice. He decided to stop hiding and move toward the sound of Luffy's voice. He wanted to warn him. He did not know that this choice would lead him directly into the jaws of the wolf. Deep in the forest, Hisoka Moro leaned against a tree. He was shuffling his cards. The sound of the cards snapping was the only noise in his immediate vicinity. The insects had gone silent because they knew a predator was nearby. Hisoka heard Luffy screaming his name. A smile curled his lips. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had been promised a feast. He had 2 unripe fruits on this island. One was the green boy, Gon, who had potential but lacked power. The other was the rubber anomaly, Luffy, who had infinite power but lacked technique. Hisoka decided he would not hunt them. He would let them come to him. He released his bloodlust. It flooded the forest like a gas leak. It was a beacon. He was inviting them to die. Luffy stomped through a patch of thorns. He did not care about the scratches. He was annoyed. He had been walking for an hour and he had not seen the clown. He saw a man with a monkey hiding in a tree. It was Sumi. Sumi threw his monkey at Luffy to distract him. Luffy caught the monkey. He looked at it. He asked the monkey if it knew where the clown was. The monkey screeched and bit Luffy's hand. Luffy frowned and put the monkey in his pocket. He kept walking. He did not even notice that he had kicked the tree so hard in frustration that Sumi fell out and was knocked unconscious. Luffy took Sumi's badge, thinking it was a souvenir, and moved on. Gon reached a clearing. He saw Hisoka standing there. The magician was waiting. The pressure was immense. Gon's knees shook. He gripped his fishing rod. He knew he was outmatched. He knew he should run. But he remembered his promise to himself. He wanted to be a hunter. Hunters did not run. Gon stepped into the clearing. Hisoka looked up. Ah, the first fruit rolls into the basket. Gon didn't speak. He cast his line. The heavy lure flew through the air, aiming for Hisoka's face. It was a perfect cast. Fast, silent, accurate. Hisoka didn't move his head. He raised 2 fingers and caught the lure. The hook dug into his skin, but he didn't flinch. He yanked the line. Gon was light. He was pulled forward, flying through the air toward Hisoka. Hisoka raised a fist to strike. Gum bullet! A rubber fist stretched out of the tree line. It slammed into Hisoka's side. The impact sounded like a car crash. Hisoka was knocked sideways, skidding across the dirt. He released the fishing line. Gon landed on his feet, stumbling. He looked up. Luffy was standing there, dusting off his hands. "Found you!" Luffy yelled. He pointed at Hisoka. "Give me your badge!" Hisoka stood up. He dusted off his outfit. He was not angry. He was trembling with pleasure. Both of them were here. It was a buffet. But he saw something that disappointed him. He saw Gon standing behind Luffy. Gon was relieved. Gon was letting Luffy take the lead. This was bad for Gon's growth. Hisoka wanted to break them, but he wanted them to break correctly. No, Hisoka said, wagging a finger. "This is a test, Luffy. You cannot help him. If you help him, he fails." Luffy looked at Gon. "Is that true?" Gon looked down. He clenched his fists. He felt ashamed. He had been saved again. He remembered the exam phase with the sushi, where Luffy destroyed everything. He remembered the tower. He was always following. He wanted to lead. "Yes," Gon said quietly. "Luffy, don't interfere. This is my fight. I have to survive him on my own." Luffy looked at Gon's shaking hands. He looked at Hisoka's cold eyes. Luffy did not understand the logic of the hunter exam. He did not care about the rules. But he understood pride. He saw that Gon needed this. "Okay," Luffy said. He sat down on the grass. "I will wait." This was the small choice. Luffy chose to respect Gon's wish. He chose to sit out. In any other timeline, this might have been the right decision. But in this timeline, against this opponent, it was a catastrophe. Because Hisoka was not playing a game. Hisoka was insulted that they thought they could make rules in his presence. Hisoka vanished. He used pure speed. He appeared in front of Gon. He did not punch. He slashed with a card. The card cut deep into Gon's shoulder. Blood sprayed. Gon screamed. He tried to swing his rod, but Hisoka was already behind him. Another slash, this time across the back of the legs. Gon fell to his knees. Luffy twitched. He started to stand up. "Sit down!" Gon yelled, tears in his eyes. "Don't help me." Luffy sat back down. His fingers dug into the dirt. He hated this. Hisoka laughed. He kicked Gon in the ribs. The sound of bone cracking echoed in the clearing. Gon coughed up blood. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. Hisoka grabbed Gon by the hair. He lifted him up. "You are not ripe yet," Hisoka whispered. "But you are rotting. You rely on the monster too much. Maybe I should prune the tree." Hisoka raised his hand. His aura flared. It was purple and thick. He was going to kill Gon. He had decided that Gon was too broken to be fun. He would kill Gon, and that would make Luffy angry. That would make the rubber fruit ripen instantly. It was a trade. One life for a better fight. Luffy saw the intent. He saw the shift in Hisoka's eyes. It wasn't a test anymore. It was an execution. Luffy did not stand up. He launched himself from the seated position. He moved so fast the grass beneath him ignited from friction. But he was too far away. Hisoka's hand was inches from Gon's throat. Suddenly, a needle flew from the shadows. It hit Hisoka's wrist. Hisoka's hand jerked to the side. He dropped Gon. Hisoka looked at the trees. Illumi Zoldyck stepped out. He was no longer wearing his disguise. His long black hair flowed in the wind. His eyes were void of emotion. He held 3 more needles between his fingers. "Stop," Illumi said. Hisoka frowned. "Illumi, you are interrupting my climax." Illumi looked at Luffy. Then he looked at Gon. Then he looked at the bushes where Killua was hiding. Killua had been watching the whole time. too terrified to move. Illumi knew Killua was there. "You are making a mess," Illumi said. "The family does not like messes, and you are about to break my brother's toy." Hisoka smiled dangerously. "Since when do you care about toys?" "I don't," Illumi said, "but I care about the anomaly." Illumi pointed at Luffy. He had been watching Luffy since the start of the exam. He had reported to his father, Silva. The order had come back. Do not engage. Observe. But Illumi disobeyed. He saw Luffy as a threat to Killua's control. If Killua stayed around Luffy, Killua would stop being an assassin. Luffy's light was too bright. It would burn the Zoldyck training away. Illumi decided to kill Luffy right here. Luffy stood up. He ignored Illumi. He walked over to Gon. He picked Gon up. Gon was barely conscious. "I am done waiting," Luffy said. His voice was flat. There was no joy in it. Luffy carried Gon to the edge of the clearing and set him down gently. He took off his straw hat. He placed it on Gon's chest. "Hold this," Luffy said. Luffy turned around. He faced Hisoka and Illumi, two of the deadliest Nen users in the world. Luffy cracked his knuckles. He did not know what Nen was. He did not know what a Zoldyck was. He only knew that they had hurt his friend. Illumi looked at Hisoka. "Shall we?" Hisoka licked his lips. He shuffled his cards. A duet? How lovely. The air on the island changed. It became heavy, like lead. The birds stopped flying. The wind stopped blowing. The mana, the life energy, the aura, whatever it was called, was screaming. Illumi threw his needles. 10 of them. They flew faster than bullets. They were aimed at Luffy's vital points. Luffy did not dodge. He took a deep breath. His body expanded. Gum-gum, balloon. The needles hit his rubber skin. They sank in a few inches, then bounced back out. Luffy exhaled, firing the needles back at Illumi. Illumi caught them effortlessly. He was surprised. Physical attacks were useless. He needed to use manipulation. Hisoka attacked from the side. He used bungee gum. He attached a strand of pink aura to Luffy's cheek when Luffy wasn't looking. He yanked. Luffy's head snapped to the side. Hisoka pulled himself toward Luffy, knee raised. He slammed his knee into Luffy's face. Luffy stumbled back. His nose was bleeding. He wiped the blood. He looked at the pink gum attached to his face. He grabbed it. He tried to pull it off. It wouldn't come off. It was sticky and elastic. "What is this gum?" Luffy yelled. Hisoka laughed. "It has the properties of both rubber and gum. You cannot break it." Luffy pulled harder. His arm stretched. The gum stretched. It was a tug-of-war between two rubber substances. Hisoka was anchored to the ground with Ko. He thought he could hold Luffy. He was wrong. Luffy planted his feet. He got angry. He pulled with everything he had. The ground under Hisoka's feet gave way. Hisoka was dragged through the dirt. Illumi seized the opening. He dashed forward. He did not throw needles. He used his hand. His fingers were sharpened into claws. He aimed for Luffy's eyes. Luffy saw him coming. He let go of the gum. Hisoka flew backward into a tree. Luffy ducked under Illumi's claws. He grabbed Illumi's wrist. "Gotcha!" Luffy growled. Luffy twisted his hips. He slammed Illumi into the ground. It was a judo throw powered by hydraulic force. The island shook. A crater formed where Illumi hit the earth. Illumi coughed up blood. His internal organs were rattled. He had used 10 to protect himself, but the physical force was overwhelming. Killua watched from the bushes. He was crying. He saw his invincible brother getting thrown like a rag doll. He saw Hisoka getting dragged. He saw Luffy fighting both of them and winning. But he also saw the cost. Luffy was covered in cuts. Hisoka's cards had sliced him in a dozen places. Illumi's needles had found their mark in his joints. Luffy was bleeding heavily. But he didn't stop. He was a berserker. Hisoka pulled himself out of the broken tree. He was laughing maniacally. He was covered in dirt and blood. This was the best day of his life. He raised both hands. He created a massive web of bungee gum. He attached it to every tree in the clearing. He created a spider web of sticky aura. "Welcome to my world," Hisoka whispered. Luffy charged. He ran into the web. He got stuck. His arm got caught. His leg got caught. The more he struggled, the more tangled he became. He was suspended in the air, limbs stretched out in an X shape. Illumi stood up. He wiped his mouth. He held a large needle, charged with enough aura to brainwash a whale. "Now," Illumi said, "we finish it." Illumi walked toward the trapped Luffy. He aimed the needle at Luffy's forehead. Luffy struggled. He couldn't move. The gum was too strong. He looked at Gon, who was lying on the grass, clutching the straw hat. Gon was watching with one swollen eye. "Run." "Luffy," Gon whispered. Luffy gritted his teeth. He closed his eyes. He felt the heat inside him, the blood pumping. He remembered the steam from the airship. He needed to go faster. He needed to pump harder. Luffy's skin turned pink. Then it turned red. The steam exploded off him. It melted the bungee gum. The heat was intense. It was gear second, but forced out by pure adrenaline before his body was ready. "Jet pistol!" Luffy's fist disappeared. It moved faster than sound. It hit Illumi in the chest before Illumi could thrust the needle. Illumi's ribcage shattered. He flew out of the clearing, smashing through tree after tree until he disappeared into the jungle darkness. Luffy ripped himself free from the melting gum. He landed on the ground. He was panting. Steam poured off his body. He looked at Hisoka. Hisoka stopped laughing. He looked at the steam. He looked at the speed. He realized that if he fought this boy now, he would die. And not in a fun way. He would be obliterated. Hisoka raised his hands. "I surrender." Luffy blinked. The steam faded. He fell to one knee. He was exhausted. The technique used too much energy. He was starving. "What?" Luffy wheezed. "I said I surrender." Hisoka smiled. He tossed his badge onto the grass, and here is Gon's badge too. "I took it while you were busy with Illumi." Hisoka walked over to Gon. He leaned down. Gon flinched. Hisoka patted Gon's cheek. "You have good friends, Gon. But be careful. If you rely on him, you will never grow. And one day, I will have to kill him to get to you." Hisoka turned and walked away into the forest. He needed to find a quiet place to heal his broken ribs. He was satisfied. He had found his ultimate prey. Luffy crawled over to Gon. He collapsed next to him. "Did we win?" Luffy asked. Gon looked at the badges in the grass. He looked at the destruction around them. The trees were gone. The ground was a crater. Illumi was gone. Hisoka was gone. "Yeah," Gon said softly. "We won." Gon handed the straw hat back to Luffy. Luffy put it on. He lay on his back and looked at the sky. "I'm hungry," Luffy said. In the bushes, Killua finally moved. He walked out. He looked at his two friends. They were beaten, bloody and half dead, but they were alive. Killua looked at his hands. He hadn't done anything. He had just watched. A deep, cold shame settled in his stomach. He realized he was not their peer. He was just a spectator. The sun began to set on Zevil Island. The fourth phase was over. But the consequences were just beginning. The Hunter Association had monitored the energy spike. Netero was looking at a screen in the airship. He saw the readings. He saw the heat signature that melted the forest. "This is not a student," Netero said to himself. "This is a warlord." And far away, on a rocky mountain, a phone rang. Illumi answered it. He was coughing blood. "Father," Illumi rasped. "I failed. The anomaly. He is too fast. We need to accelerate the plan. Killua is in danger." On the other end of the line, Silva Zoldyck was silent. Then he spoke. "Bring him home. Use force if you have to. And if the rubber boy interferes, kill him." This ended not with a cheer, but with a silence that promised war. The secrecy of the exam was gone. The powers of the world were turning their eyes toward the boy in the straw hat. And Luffy just wanted a sandwich. The tragedy was that his hunger was going to consume everyone around him. Gon's innocence was the first course. Killua's freedom would be the second. The airship ride to the final exam site was quiet. It was not the peaceful quiet of a library, but the heavy quiet of a hospital waiting room. The applicants sat in the main hall, nursing their wounds. The psychological weight of Zevil Island hung over them. They looked at the boy in the straw hat with a mixture of awe and terror. Luffy sat in the corner, surrounded by plates of food that Netero had ordered for him. He was eating with a mechanical intensity. His body was recharging. The steam that had poured off him in the forest had burned away his energy reserves. He looked thinner, his eyes sunken, but with every bite of meat, his skin regained its color. He did not speak. He did not smile. He was focused on survival. Gon lay on a bench nearby, his arm in a sling. He was awake, staring at the ceiling. He felt a deep frustration. He had passed the fourth phase only because Hisoka allowed it. He had been a spectator in his own rescue. He looked at Luffy, who was eating like a starving animal, and felt a gap widening between them. Gon wanted to be strong, but he realized now that strength came with a terrifying cost. Killua stood by the window, looking out at the dark clouds. He had not slept. His hands were in his pockets, trembling slightly. He tried to stop them, but he couldn't. He kept replaying the fight in his head. He saw his brother, Illumi, a figure of absolute fear in his life, thrown through the forest like a rag doll. He saw Luffy's skin turn red. He saw the sheer, overwhelming violence. Killua had always thought he was special. He was a Zoldyck. He was a prodigy. But standing next to Luffy, he felt like a normal child. The voice of his brother whispered in his ear, telling him he was not good enough, that he was a coward who watched while his friends bled. The airship landed at the final venue, a hotel run by the Hunter Association. Netero gathered the remaining applicants. There were only a few left. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, Leorio, Hisoka, Hanzo, Pokale, Bodoro, and Gitarakur. The man with the needles in his face was back. Illumi had returned. He walked with a limp. His chest was wrapped in thick bandages under his shirt. He did not look at Luffy. He stood in the back, his aura suppressed to zero. He was playing a different game now. He realized that physical force would not work on the anomaly. He had to break the group from the inside. Netero unveiled the bracket for the final tournament. The rules were strange. You only needed to win one match to pass. The loser advanced to the next bracket. The person who lost every match failed, but you could not kill your opponent. If you killed, you were disqualified. It was a test of restraint. The first match was Gon versus Hanzo. Luffy sat in the front row. He crossed his legs. He watched Gon step into the arena. Hanzo was a ninja, a master of combat. Gon was an injured boy with a fishing rod. The fight began, and it was brutal. Hanzo was faster and stronger. He hit Gon. He broke Gon's arm. He swept his legs. He tortured him. He told Gon to surrender. Gon refused. He kept standing up. His face was swollen. His arm hung uselessly at his side, but his eyes were clear. He would not give up. Luffy watched. His hands gripped his knees. The wood of the chair cracked under his fingers. He wanted to jump in. He wanted to punch Hanzo through the wall. But he remembered the forest. He remembered Gon begging him not to interfere. This was the hardest thing Luffy had ever done. He had to sit still while his friend was hurt. He learned that respecting a friend meant letting them suffer for their dream. Hanzo eventually broke. He could not crush Gon's spirit. He surrendered, giving Gon the win. Gon passed the exam. He was knocked unconscious immediately after and taken to the infirmary. Luffy let out a breath he had been holding for an hour. He looked at Hanzo. "You are strong," Luffy said. Hanzo looked at the boy. He saw the broken chair under Luffy's hands. Hanzo swallowed. He realized that if he had killed Gon, he would not have left this room alive. "Thanks," Hanzo said. The matches continued. Kurapika fought Hisoka. Hisoka whispered something in Kurapika's ear and surrendered. Hisoka had passed. He walked to the side of the room and leaned against the wall, staring at Luffy. Hisoka was still injured from the island, but his bloodlust was potent. He was waiting for Luffy's turn. Finally, it was Luffy's match. His opponent was Pakal, an archer with a bow and arrows. Pakal looked confident. He thought he could keep his distance. "Begin," the referee shouted. Pakal drew his bow. "I am fast," he warned. "I can hit a target from—" Luffy did not move. He just opened his mouth. "I am tired," Luffy said. Luffy stomped his foot. He did not use the gear technique. He did not stretch. He just stomped on the floorboards with raw, frustrations-fueled strength. The shockwave traveled through the floor. The tiles under Pakal's feet exploded upward. Pakal was launched into the air. He hit the ceiling fan and fell back down, unconscious. The referee blinked. "Winner. Luffy." Luffy stood there. He did not cheer. He did not ask for meat. He just walked out of the ring. Passing the exam felt easy. Too easy. It did not feel like a victory. It felt like paperwork. He walked over to Leorio and sat down. "Is Gon okay?" Luffy asked. Leorio nodded, sweating. "He is sleeping. You passed, Luffy. You are a hunter." Luffy looked at the small card the referee handed him. It was just a piece of plastic. He put it in his pocket. "It is small," Luffy said. The tournament moved to the final matches. It was Killua's turn. His opponent was Gitarakur. Killua walked into the center of the room. He looked tired. He just wanted to win and go see Gon. He expected a quick fight. But then, Gitarakur reached up and pulled the needles out of his face. His facial structure shifted. His hair fell down. The disguise vanished. Illumi Zoldyck stood there. He was pale. He held his side where his ribs were broken, but his eyes were pitch-black voids. Killua froze. His blood ran cold. "Brother," Killua whispered. Illumi looked at Killua. He did not assume a fighting stance. He just spoke. "I heard you made some friends to kill," Illumi said. His voice was raspy. Killua took a step back. I did." Illumi shook his head slowly. "No, you didn't. You are a killer. Killers do not have friends. We have targets, and we have masters." "I am not a killer," Killua shouted. "I want to be a hunter. I want to travel with Gon and Luffy." Illumi's eyes narrowed. Luffy. The rubber boy. Illumi pointed a finger at Killua. A heavy wave of Ren washed over the room. It was thick and malicious. It smelled like a grave. "You saw him, didn't you?" Illumi asked softly. "You saw him in the forest. You saw what he did to me. You saw what he did to Hisoka. He is a monster. Kill. He is not like us. He is a force of nature." Killua trembled. He couldn't deny it. The image of Luffy's red skin and the steam was burned into his mind. "If you stay with him," Illumi continued, his voice drilling into Killua's brain, "you will die. You are weak. You just watched. You were scared. One day his enemies will come for him, and they will be monsters too, and you will be the weak link. You will get in his way. Or worse, he will kill you by accident because you are too fragile to stand in his storm." "Stop it!" Killua screamed. Illumi took a step forward. Go home, Kill. You do not belong here. You cannot be a hunter. You cannot be his friend. If you try, I will kill Gon, and I will make you watch." Killua's mind shattered. The fear of his brother, combined with the deep insecurity of watching Luffy's power, was too much. He believed it. He believed he was a liability. He believed he was not worthy. "I surrender," Killua whispered. Illumi smiled. "Good boy." Illumi turned to the referee. "I win." The match was over, but the violence was not. Killua stood there, his eyes empty. The light was gone. He had reverted to the assassin. He needed to escape. He needed to get away from Luffy, away from the reminder of his own weakness. The next match was Leorio versus Bodoro, the old martial artist. Bodoro stepped into the ring. Leorio was nervous. Killua was standing on the sidelines. He was supposed to leave the ring, but he didn't. He walked up behind Bodoro. The referee shouted, "Hey, get out of there!" Killua did not hear him. He only heard the voice in his head saying he was a killer. He needed to prove it. He needed to prove he was unredeemable so that Gon and Luffy would hate him. If they hated him, they would be safe from him. Killua's hand turned into a claw. He moved faster than Leorio could see. He thrust his hand into Bodoro's chest. There was a wet, tearing sound. Luffy stood up. His chair fell over. "Killua!" Luffy yelled. Killua pulled his hand back. Bodoro fell forward, dead before he hit the ground. Killua looked at his bloody hand. He looked at Luffy. His eyes were dead. "I am a killer," Killua said flatly. "I failed the exam. I am going home." The room erupted in chaos. The examiners rushed in. Leorio was screaming. Kurapika was in shock. Illumi watched from the corner, satisfied. He had lost the physical fight with Luffy, but he had won the war for his brother's soul. Luffy walked toward Killua. He did not care about the dead body. He did not care about the rules. He walked right up to the assassin. "Why?" Luffy asked. Killua did not look at him. "Stay away from me. You are a monster. I don't want to be near you." Killua turned and walked toward the door. The examiners tried to stop him, but Netero raised a hand. "Let him go. He is disqualified." Luffy stood there, watching his friend leave. He felt a pain in his chest that had nothing to do with injuries. It was the pain of losing a crewmate. He realized that physical strength could not save everyone. He had punched Illumi. He had punched Hisoka. He had punched the forest, but he could not punch the darkness out of Killua's head. The exam ended. Gon woke up in the infirmary hours later. His arm was in a cast. Satots, the first examiner, was there. He told Gon what happened. He told him about the tournament. He told him that Killua had killed a man and left. Gon sat up. He ripped the IV out of his arm. "Where is he?" Gon demanded. Satots sighed. "He is gone. He went back to his family, to Kukuru Mountain." Gon got out of bed. He stumbled into the hallway. He found Luffy sitting in the lobby. Luffy was looking at his hunter license. He was bending it, testing its durability. "Luffy," Gon said. Luffy looked up. His eyes were serious. "Killua left," Luffy said. "I know," Gon said. "We have to go get him." Luffy nodded. He stood up. He put the license in his pocket. "Yeah, we do." They walked out of the hotel. Kurapika and Leorio were waiting for them. They had heard the news. They had their licenses, but the mood was somber. "We are coming too," Kurapika said. "We cannot let him go back to that place." Illumi was waiting outside the gate. He was leaning against a tree. He looked at the group. He looked at Luffy. "You are wasting your time," Illumi said. "He chose to leave. He belongs to the shadows." Luffy walked up to Illumi. The pressure returned. The ground cracked slightly under Luffy's sandals. "He is my friend," Luffy said. "I'm coming to take him back." Illumi looked at the boy. He remembered the pain of the jet pistol. He knew he could not stop them here. Not without dying. Try if you want, Illumi said. But Kukuru Mountain is not an exam. It is a fortress, and my father is waiting. Illumi vanished into the trees. The group stood on the road. The hunter exam was over. They were hunters now, but the title meant nothing. They were just 4 friends standing on the edge of a dangerous world, missing one of their own. Luffy adjusted his straw hat. He looked at the horizon. He was tired. He was hurt. But his resolve was harder than diamond. "Let's go," Luffy said. They began to walk. They did not celebrate. There was no music. There was only the sound of their footsteps on the pavement, echoing forward into a future that was darker and more violent than they had ever imagined. The timeline had shifted. The threats had escalated, and the Zoldyck family was preparing for war. Netero watched them go from the window of the airship. He held a phone to his ear. "Yes," Netero said into the phone. "The anomaly has passed. He is a hunter now, but I fear we have unleashed something we cannot control." On the other end of the line, a voice spoke. It was a member of the Zodiacs. "What is his classification?" Netero looked at Luffy's retreating back. Type: disaster. Netero hung up. The story of the hunter exam was finished. The story of the world's end had just begun. The official records of the Hunter Association regarding the 287th exam were sealed 3 days after the ceremony. The public database lists 7 new hunters, but the detailed reports on the events at Zevil Island and the final tournament were redacted by direct order of Chairman Netero. The examiners themselves requested leaves of absence. Menchi, a single-star gourmet hunter, known for her fiery temper, retired from exam proctoring entirely. She cited a loss of confidence in her ability to gauge human potential. She could not look at a piece of meat without remembering the boy who ate poison and fire as if they were snacks. The psychological toll on the staff was measurable. They had witnessed a paradigm shift in the food chain, and they were no longer at the top. In the dark underbelly of York New City, the information broker network was buzzing with rumors. A blurry photograph, taken by a hidden camera in the Trick Tower, was selling for millions of Jenny. It showed a limb stretching 50 feet across a void to crush a prisoner. This photo eventually found its way to a dark room filled with candles and rubble. Crollo Lucilfer, the leader of the Phantom Troupe, held the photo in his hand. He sat on a stone block, surrounded by his spiders. He did not smile. He did not analyze the Nen. He simply looked at the anomaly. Beside him, Hisoka sat in the shadows, shuffling his deck with a slow, rhythmic clicking sound. Hisoka did not tease or joke. He was healing his broken ribs, waiting for the day he could challenge the monster again. Crollo closed the book he was holding. He realized that the prophecy he had stolen from the Neon Nostrada might no longer apply. A variable had entered the equation that destiny had not accounted for. The spider was no longer the most dangerous thing in the web. Far to the east, the Republic of Padokia prepared for a siege. The tourists who usually gathered to take pictures of the testing gate at Kukuru Mountain were turned away by armed guards. The Zoldyck family had gone into a state of high alert. Inside the estate, the great guard dog Mike cowered in the back of his cave, refusing to come out. He could smell it on the wind. It was not the scent of a human or a beast. It was the scent of the apex predator approaching. Silva Zoldyck sat in his chambers, sharpening a knife that he had not used in years. He had received Illumi's report. He knew that Killua was home, but he also knew that the gate would not keep the intruders out. The testing gate was designed to measure strength, but the boy coming for Killua did not measure strength. He broke scales. The sun set over the Dendora region. 4 figures walked along the highway. They were small against the vast landscape. They carried backpacks and fishing rods and wooden swords. They looked like children on an adventure. But the shadow they cast was long and terrible. The world of hunters was a world of equivalent exchange. Power came with a price. Conditions required sacrifices. But Monkey D. Luffy had never signed a contract. He did not care about the rules of Nen. He was a singularity of pure will. As they walked toward the mountain that touched the clouds, the timeline groaned under the weight of his existence. The safe history was gone. The story of a boy looking for his father was now the story of a rubber demigod tearing down the walls of the world to save a friend. The future was unwritten, and it was terrified.